had primaries, and there were a few people that did face attacks for their positions on the death penalty. I know Gary Holder Winfield down in New Haven, who was led the fight. There was an ad, or not an ad, there was an article a couple days before the election, death penalty divides candidates. His opponent was pro-death penalty. He wasn't. He won by over 70% of the vote. On the Republican side, he had, in the Attorney General's race, he had Martha Dean, who's against the death penalty, and he had Ross Garber sending out a mailing attacking her. She won by over 60% of the vote. So I think at the end of the day, this is not what voters are going to be voting on.
Can you share a little bit about this book that's in front of you?
Sure. This is Scott Turow's book, Ultimate Punishment. It's an excellent read, especially if you have any friends who are pro-death penalty, but very reasonable people. This is just a terrific book that just goes through all the different arguments and basically says at the end of the day, the system doesn't work and we can't have it as a society. Scott Turow, you saw him in the video, he's a lawyer, best-selling author. He was picked to be on the commission. And we have a number of these books back there, and if anyone wants to become a member of the CNADP, you can have books. So I highly recommend it. It's a great read.
I want to just react to something that said about people not going to the polls on a particular issue like this. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that they go to the polls on an issue like that. But look what's happening. I'm going to cite the Blumenthal is right now. Look what they're doing to him about a statement made on his service during the Vietnam era. That's been made to be an issue. And are people going to the polls on whether or not he misspoke or didn't misspeak? They're not. But that's what's out there. And it's a wedge issue that you can use to go after someone. And that's how it'll be used. It'll be used to go after someone. And that's the fear for someone who's running for elected office. Whether that's going to come, somebody's going to blow it into something. And again, it wouldn't be the case if this wasn't September 16th and you've got the pen trial going on. I'm sorry, that is really going to be in people's face right now. And it's going to be a tough statement for any person running for elected office to stay firm on this issue. I think it's a tough one. So.
But I also think that's why it's really important for you to get out to those candidate events and express your opinion on abolition, because that will give those people who are running who support abolition a lot better backing. It'll make them feel more confident in their position on this issue, and I think it will counteract the other side if they try to make this a wedge issue. So it's really important to be involved in this very important election cycle.
Now, I thought maybe I would open it up to see if anybody has questions or comments or anyone? Yes.
My name is Jeff Rainier, and I oppose the death penalty. However, I wanted to just point out a couple of items that I think provide the fuel that the pro-death penalty segment of the population is motivated by. And that's the perceived problems with the parole system. The lack of trust in government to protect us from criminals, and to keep criminals in prison when they belong there. The Pettit murderers were both parolees. And so I think that it would be much better received by people who take the attitude, well, if you had killed them in the first place, they'll never do it again. At least those two will never do it again. The lack of trust that the system will indeed keep people in prison who belong in prison and protect innocence from them. So I think that it should come along. I think that the proposed about abolition of the death penalty should come along with the promise to fix the system and have more professional people involved in evaluating who gets paroled, who doesn't, and have a better system in place. The other thing is the numbers. When you say that it's less expensive to keep somebody in prison than to kill them, that doesn't include the cost of keeping other people in prison who might have gotten paroled but wouldn't under this new. You know what I'm saying? You avoid this. You avoid the crime in the first place if you don't release somebody who is a potential threat. I'm not saying everybody who goes to jail should stay in jail forever, but I'm saying we should be doing psychological evaluations to try to establish where these people are in their heads and what threat they truly pose.
Any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, you raise a very important problem, but I think it's a problem much bigger than the one that we're addressing, because if we did abolish the death penalty, you know, the bill that passed last year, it only applies to capital felonies. So in all capital felonies, individuals receive life in prison without release instead of the death penalty. And so there's no possibility of parole at all. There are no parole hearings for these individuals.
I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying it's the fuel when you talk to people in their homes and they're angry about the death penalty and they're angry if they want somebody, they want justice or retribution. And they point out that this person was paroled and it was basically a failure of the system to protect society from a violent criminal. And it gets a lot of play in the air every time a violent pedophile or person is released and recommits a crime. There's a lot of play. There are news shows that are dedicated night in and night out to rehashing violent crime.
Right. I mean, I guess to fix that system, I mean, because getting rid of the death penalty isn't going to, let more people out, and that's not going to cause a problem. And the money we do save, I mean, we could put that towards law enforcement, towards having a safer system. And the money saved will be real. I mean, in Connecticut, it would be $4 million a year. And it wouldn't, you mentioned that the cost figure doesn't figure in certain costs?
Well, it wouldn't, if you kept people in prison more often than paroling them, or certain people in prison, it doesn't factor those costs in. So if you disallow parole based upon psychological profiles and not just a more thorough evaluation by trained people, and you have different, I'm not exactly sure what the criteria are to get somebody paroled, but if you reviewed that, perhaps fewer people would get paroled, and that would increase the cost of keeping people in prison.
We are looking at that issue in the legislature. We have done that. One of the problems with, I think it was Hayes, was that the parole board didn't have all of his files. And that they were not electronic. They were in cardboard boxes in a variety of places. And when we were getting that information during the process, it was rather appalling to think, here we are in 2008 or whatever it was that we were looking at it, to think that that information like that wouldn't be readily available to be pulled up on a computer screen, and that everybody on that parole board would have had, his background history. The whole history of the criminal justice system, that's a whole nother topic for discussion. New Haven apparently hasn't prosecuted a case for years. Everything goes to plea bargaining. That's a major problem, and Connecticut has a horrific record on recidivism. This is huge, like 40%, or maybe even higher than that. The cost is incredible, and we need to be doing more on, if we're going to save money, I'd like to see it go into prevention, back in pre-K. And because most of these guys are, who are these repeat offenders, really, they're illiterate. You know, they have no other there. Yes, sir.
There is no doubt that the whole way we're working things isn't working. Our prisons are the most filled in the world, I guess, you know, in proportion to our population. We have the highest rate of people in prison, which says that we're not resolving a lot of problems that aren't related to capital punishment directly. But on the capital punishment thing, I think the wedge, I don't fear the wedge there as much as I would fear if I feared it for Mr. Blumenthal. Because I've been a wannabe every now and then, and I think that's been his problem, and it should have just been a little problem, and it's been made to be a big problem. Wannabe what he wasn't. But for the most part, he really has, you know, I'm a veteran, but I never questioned whether he was a veteran or not in all the years. It never entered my mind. But on this wedge business, if the right education occurs through the population that feels that capital punishment isn't the way to go, and the ACL is out there, and CNADP is out there, and whoever else is out there doing its work, just like, and we might have a governor that ends up saying that he or she is for capital punishment, but it may be like the Illinois governor in the long run when enough comes to the fore, and have someone that's alive and well in the head. And I don't know, I hate to think that a candidate couldn't be elected in this state and have that. I suppose if it's the main thing on his or her slate, it could be to their detriment, but if it's just part of many things that that person is for, I think there could be a lot of support.
I think maybe one of the questions that, we all can ask candidates, not only, something about, how do you feel about the death penalty? I mean, I've been teaching since 1968, and so the foremost thing in my mind, or one of them, is, well, tell me what you're going to do about education. Because like Bert said, we are seriously talking about beginning in kindergarten with being able to have literate students, ones that have the facility to even, students to be able to learn to discuss the arguments of ethical questions. That is something we're not teaching students. We're not giving them that. How do you work around an argument? What are the different positions? How do you support your opinion, not just, that bleeding heart? These are real educational issues, and I think, an educated populace, an eternal optimist, is going to be some of these problems